2002 to the present, 2022 until the present. So I'm also mindful of the important constitutional duty of this chamber to pass the appropriations bill. And as I reflect on my time in the previous 7 debates, the importance of the independent, professional-minded people who gather in this chamber to deliberate on the government's broad fiscal, economic, and even indeed wider social programs for the ensuing year. I begin, sir, with a sense of humility. I'm humbled by this privilege. Privileged by the honor, but still humbled by the privilege to do so. And I want to, Mr. President, congratulate the Minister and the Ministry of Finance for the presentation of the annual budget in the other place. I do so with beaming pride as a former schoolmate of mine from Commonwealth School. We played in the cadet band together. And that is not because I am choosing one school over the other, because I will come to the leader of government business in the Senate's presentation a little later. She too acquitted herself. But it is important, Mr. President, because ordinarily in the course of one's public life in this chamber, when you get to 4 debates, it ordinarily would signal that you are near to the end of the administration, unless, of course, you hold on beyond the constitutional period, like the last government that we had. And I want, sir, to draw the contrast, because when you listen to these debates, and I have the habit of doing so from the time I was young, having seen the great Tom Adams and the great Dr. Richie Haynes spar at these debates, and then Professor Owen Arthur and Sandy, Prime Minister Sandyford, and coming down the lines, even my late good friend David Thompson, who joined in these debates in the other place, Mr. President. And Barbadians will want to ask themselves the sobering question, so what is the difference? On Monday, we gathered around the bar after the break, and one of the independent senators made the point, what is the fundamental difference between the operations of the 2 political parties? What is the guiding philosophy between the 2 political parties? Barbadians have made their judgments on that before. Barbadians have made a determination. I mean, when you look at it practically, in practical terms, both parties have won government almost the same amount of times. But we know, sir, from the facts, that in our adult life, every time the Barbados Labour Party has had to come to office, it has to face a crisis. The first time was a crisis created by the sheer lack of development planning and focus by the colonial masters of the day, who only had to plan an economy based on the performance of the sugar industry, and bequeathed to us a legacy of underdevelopment in every social and economic sector on this island. When the Labour Party came to office in 1976, there was a complete crisis in the confidence of this country. And while the mantra was that you wish there was no longer be a day that there be no cane blaze in Barbados, the true diversification of the Barbadian economy, which began under Grantley Adams with the 1951 Hotel Aids Act, which saw Sandy Lane being transformed from a sugar plantation to a hotel. We saw the rapid transformation under the Tom Adams administration with the incentives and the creation of other sectors of economic activity. A sector, Mr. President, like the international business sector, the brainchild of the Barbados Labour Party, which brings over $800 million to the public treasury in this financial year. And when the legislation was laid in the other place, Mr. President, you heard that this was for fancy men in suits coming to Barbados. Indeed, the last DLP administration so ignored the international business sector that they merged international business with international transport. So we created a Ministry of International Business and International Transport just because the word international was in the two of them. And we saw the virtual collapse of the sector. We saw the underperformance of the sector. We saw the flight of swaths of international business corporations. We saw Paul Martin, the former Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, and Prime Minister of Canada, whose large businesses were incorporated as international business companies in Barbados. And he gave up the premiership of that country because he could not withstand the scandal that the blind trust created in favor of his sons was sufficient for the Canadian public to take. But he moved that business, which poured millions of dollars into Barbados Treasury, out of Barbados because of the blacklisting that ensued because of the inertia and inactivity. But this was a sector, Mr. President, that was foo-fooed and never thought of. When you, sir, became the minister responsible for that, I remember very clearly a lot of what the then opposition leader called it, technobabble, was what it was referred to. Now we're hearing it fluff. But when we talk about the diversification of the Barbadian economy, name a business policy other than summer camps and bus fares, free bus fares, that the Democratic Labour Party has brought to the enfranchisement of this country. Name one. Name one sector. Tourism, the backbone of the Barbadian economy. They want us to diversify from tourism, but they haven't told you to do what, you know? Because, Mr. President, I want you to understand that this is a grievance politics being practiced by the DLP and has been traditionally practiced by the DLP. The same way they told Grantley Adams that we do not need a deep water harbor because it will put the lighter men out of work. The same way they told Tom Adams that we don't want a highway. The same way that you get the picture that I'm trying to paint, Mr. President. And they list all of the grievances in this society and jump on a soapbox and this is Len. And I have given up flour and things that look fluffy, so I'm not dealing with you. Not dealing with you today. But sir, when I say grievance, they've identified things and they sound good. And you make Barbadians get into a frenzy. And we could go on, and I don't want, Mr. President, to be dedicating my time to be defending a lot of that hot air. Because as a father and as a professional in this country, I know what it is to live under administrations that come in after the Barbados Labour Party has laid a sound economic track record for the country and to be ruled by a political party that has a worldview. That everything that was done in Barbados prior to and at around independence was good and perfect, and therefore we don't need to make any other decisions in the future of our country. When a political leader can say, Mr. President, that he will defend the common entrance exam, which we all know was designed in a colonial system. And my learned good friend, Reverend Morris, spoke about Bishop Parr and Bishop Corrish, but it started out by Bishop Michigan in the 1846 reports on education in Barbados to control random middle-class ambition. That was the purpose of the design of the Victorian education system that we still have today. When you meet people, the first thing they ask you, where did you go to school? Who's your father and your mother? I have to disappoint them, like Senator comes to tell them, my parents are ordinary Bajans. I didn't go to Harrison College. And they start to wonder, well, how you get so far in this society? A class system. That when we start to unravel the reasons why we have the challenges we have in Barbados, it is all rooted in the economic and social class structure of the society that we have in a post-independence era. And we have to unpack these debates. But the grievance politics, Mr. President, will not get us far. I want to congratulate Minister Strawn for his brilliant presentation. I know people will feel that they didn't cover everything and that a budget can't do it. But I judge, Mr. President, the policy of the government, which I support, on the basis of some tried-tested measures of public policy and good public policy. Sir, there's a global realignment occurring. There is a global realignment, and this is not anything to foo-foo. And this budget has sought to ensure that the country can withstand the level of readjustments that are occurring at the same time as maintaining the social order, the quality of life in the country. Last week, a block of ice broke off the Arctic, larger than Manhattan. In a country where we are a limestone settlement, one of 3 in the Western Hemisphere, that has serious implications for our groundwater supply. The salt penetration into the aquifers as a result of climate change. We could shout about the QAH and all the roads and the schools and all these things. But if we cannot shore up our coastlines, our nearshore environment, and our marine environment as a result of a climate change phenomenon that is being ignored by the Western powers and the European powers that want to ensure that the warming of the climate can allow them to access the hydrocarbon reserves in the Arctic and those places. And that is not being alarmist, that is a fact. Because the President of the United States of America says, drill, baby, drill. And therefore, Alaska and the Arctic and now Greenland can be the basis for the techno-oligarchs who now stand proudly in the White House, commanding the President of the United States of America to do as they demand. Drill, baby, drill. Barbados has to suffer the consequences of that. So when Barbados has to choose, Barbadians have to choose between a political administration that brings climate resilience into the core of the budgetary proposals and what we have to do as to realign our strategies. We can hear the discussion coming from the other side. There is a decisive difference. Mr. President, we are witnessing the end of the current global capitalist system, in my view. And I say that because I had the benefit as a student to study Andre Gunder Frank, Emmanuel Wallerstein, Herbert Duke, world system theory. This capitalism cycle is coming to an end. Yeah. The settlement that occurred in the mid-20th century after World War II has now exhausted. It's bursting at the seams. And we are seeing a resort to inward economic and military interests by the great powers of the world. We are seeing the rise of the billionaire class who have doubled their wealth since 2020. And their interests have now become the interests of the most powerful nations in the world. We are now, Mr. President, the slaves to the technology owned by the Bezoses, the Zuckerbergs, and the Musks of the world. We have to log in. And we are now, sir, competing in a world where we are not using our labor and our capital to build goods and services, but even the people who manufacture have to forfeit 40% of the cost of the good to sell it on international platforms like Amazon. You imagine that? So the surplus is not going back into the owner of capital who has invested. That system of economic organization of the world is now coming to an end, Mr. President. And the country has to understand that Barbados cannot stand splendidly in isolation. And when I began this journey in public life, Mr. President, I have started to look at certain things which will guide my perspective on how I engage in these matters. And I often go by a quotation, and if you speak to me on social media or in WhatsApp, my message is simple. The world is what it is. And men who are nothing and who allow themselves to be nothing have no place in it. Those are the words of V.S. Naipaul in the introduction of his book, A Bend in the River, describing the tragic journey of the human circumstance. The world is what it is. Men who are nothing and who allow themselves to be nothing have no place in it. And I want, sir, during the course of the rest of my presentation, to rise above the partisan rancor and the divisive politics and the politics of grievance that all of a sudden this little place is now tearing apart and a tyranny is reigning and a dystopian future awaits us with not a care for the ever clear and present dangers that are ahead. Mr. President, the Bible tells us that when the Israelites were gathering the troops to fight the Midianites, the Lord told them, that army too large. And if you go and get beat, the people can blame the Lord. Reduce the army, but how? Find soldiers who have their gaze on the horizon, and those who went and drank from the river without looking down to make sure that they kept their eyes on the enemies around were sent back home. Mr. President, I say to the people of Barbados, this government will drink from the river, but we will keep our eyes, gaze, and fix on the international, regional, and local environmental considerations that we have to face. And that is what motivates the budget. It will not titillate those whose minds and gazes are fixed on only a nativist internal reordering of the political structure in Barbados. They have clear and present dangers. Mr. President, climate resilience has to be built in to what the government does. And the clear contrast between the Barbados Labour Party and the Democratic Labour Party is after Hurricane Beryl, the opposition leader told the country that we should have moved all the boats in Barbados to St. Thomas and put them on the highlands so that the boats will not be affected by a storm. Mr. President, this was a Category 4 hurricane. Sorry, this was a tropical depression that moved into a Category 1 hurricane, into a Category 3 in less than 24 hours. The intensification of the storm was historically high. The speed at which it developed. Tropical wave in the Atlantic, we're keeping our eyes on it. Category 1 in a hurry, and mercifully, it went between Barbados and the Northern Grenadines. That should signal a warning. What should the government do, Mr. President? And we understand the impact on the South Coast. Imagine if that had a more direct path in to Barbados. So what does the government do? We could sit down and criticize the climate resilient measures in the budget. What does a responsible government do? St. Thomas don't want no dead wood, but you want to carry all the boats up to St. Thomas. Like if that is a practical solution to a real problem. That is the difference between the two political parties that govern the country, Mr. President. Mr. President, again, there's an African proverb that I want to reintroduce into this chamber that guides my reflections. And it says that in Africa, every morning, a lion wakes up and knows that it must run faster than the slowest gazelle. If not, it will starve. Every morning, the gazelle wakes up and knows it must run faster than the fastest lion. If not, it will be eaten. It matters not whether you are a lion or you're a gazelle. But in Africa, every morning when the sun rises, you must run fast. That is the world that we are in. That is the perspective that I am offering to you, Mr. President, and those who can hear, that if you are engaged in public policy formulation and critique in this era, that you must adopt. Barbados cannot stand splendidly in isolation. And when the divisive politics of discontent and of grievance is mounted by the other side, they will tell you things like the Prime Minister always traveling. But I am seeing international leaders coming to this country to engage with Barbados. I am seeing the Prime Minister of the largest and most popular, when I say largest, I mean in terms of most populous nation in the world, India, coming directly to engage with Barbados. I'm seeing the African continent responding to Barbados, championing causes, joining in chorus with the Republic of Barbados on important global issues. The Prime Minister of Barbados has received the Kofi Annan Award, the Nelson Mandela Award, United Nations Award for Global Excellence. If you go on the United Nations website, Mr. President, you will see that the global leader in relation to climate and bringing a difference in terms of the restructuring of global financial architecture. When this government, Mr. President, negotiates climate debt swap, the Green Climate Initiative, debt for nature swaps, and the debt, I can't remember the name of the term now, but in terms of what you get in relief, the debt relief clauses, 20% of our GDP unlocks $2 billion. If we get hit by a major catastrophe, it unlocks $2 billion. We don't have to pay loans for 2 years. That is because we understand the realities, the world is what it is. And men who are nothing and who allow themselves to be nothing have no place in it. The decisive difference between the two political parties, Mr. President. The decisive difference. That African proverb between the lion and gazelle, Mr. President, emphasizes the constant struggle for survival. And as a small island state, we want not to see ourselves limited by the inhibition of the small geographical size of our landmass. We are a large ocean state. We are a large ocean state, and therefore we have to see ourselves as showing the world our capacity to function in a new environment in which we see ourselves differently. Mr. President, that African proverb highlights the need for continuous effort and action regardless of one's position or circumstances. Because the lion and the gazelle has to run fast. That African proverb, Mr. President, highlights the importance of being proactive and never become complacent. The environment changes. And they might not want to hear it, but the environment is changing around us, Mr. President. So that, Mr. President, I have heard a number of things in the debate. Can't respond to all of them. But we were accused as an administration has taken in more taxes than any other administration in the history of the country. As if to say that that is something wrong. Mr. President, you will not be surprised to know that every administration in the history of Barbados has taken in more taxes than the previous administration. That is, therefore, in itself not a fact of note. But when you hear the opposition members, particularly the ones in this chamber, quoting statistics, I always remember what a senator in this chamber, a former senator in this chamber, when he taught me statistics at the university, that is Senator Tyrone Barker, always used to tell us. Statistics, he was quoting George Bernard Shaw. Statistics are like a woman in a bikini. What they reveal is interesting, but what they conceal is vital. So when you tell the country that we have taken in more taxes than the last administration, you're revealing that the last administration also took in more taxes in 10 years than the Wenapa administration in 14. But you don't tell the country that the size of the Barbadian economy under the Frandustro administration was smaller than the size of the economy under Tom Adams. So we are not getting into real economic assessments and forecasting. When you tell the country that we are taking in all these taxes and the increases in taxes, tell the country that this administration reduced income tax. Tell the country that this administration reduced land tax and corporation taxes and remove the inequitous national social responsibility levy that could not get Barbados out of the fiscal challenges that led us to the door of the IMF. And when they speak, they must say to the country, no one has explained, when they called elections in May 2018, they were telling the country that the debt to GDP ratio was 137% of GDP. We came to office and found that that was not so. We had a Eurobonds payment due weeks after that the country didn't know. We were at the brink of devaluation. And the first time we had to default on the international loan, not because of anything that we did, because for the last 6 or 7 years, the central bank was forbidden to publish the economic reports to the country. And we only got that information from the IMF assessments, not from the central bank reports. There was no tyranny then. There was no tyranny. And everybody in Barbados is still silent, but I understand Barbadian people. That is what happened to them for the last 2 election cycles, because they forbade the central bank from publishing financial reports.
On a point of order, Mr. President,
yes,
that Senator Nichols is misleading the House. At no point in time, if you go on the central bank website, you will see all of the financial reports on a quarterly basis during the period of between 2008 to 2018, when the Democratic Labour Party was in office. So Senator Nichols is misleading the chamber with that statement that we forbid the central bank from publishing economic reports.
Thank you, Senator Worrell. Please proceed, Senator.
I thank you, Mr. President. I don't think the senator is listening. I said it forbidden from publishing. The fact that they're there now doesn't mean that you did not forbid them from publishing. Exactly. The governor of the central bank came out with a different analysis and said this is not the report that in traditional form Barbadians can remember. And the reports are there, Mr. President. I happen to know that they fired the central bank governor because he told them, well, we're going to stop printing money now. I remember having told the IMF that we would stop putting pressure on the central bank governor and publish for the IMF consultation an amendment to the Central Bank Act. They turned around 2 months later and fired the central bank governor because he stopped them from printing money and running up the deficit to the Central Bank of Barbados and putting pressure on the foreign reserves. That's when they went to the National Insurance Fund to fund not developments like the schools that Senator Walters wants and the hospital that Senator Worrell asks for, but to pay public service salaries, Mr. President. In those IMF reports, the $1 billion write-off for NIS, you know what that was? That was the government of Barbados under the DLP spending the national insurance money to pay salaries. That there is nothing to show for it. And that is a fact. Tell the country where we didn't come and lick out $1 billion of the national insurance. We had to restructure all of Barbados' debt and write off all of what we had to write off in respect of own to creditors. Everybody had to take a haircut. The $1 billion was not of our manufacture. But they come standing on a soapbox to tell people, as I heard in here, that we're going to make people retire now at a later age. Now, let us be real, Mr. President. You have a shrinking population. You have an aging population. So that the rate at which people retire is happening faster. So it means that you have more people living longer, having to get Social Security benefits that are being replenished by a smaller working population. And as a responsible government, there are three options. You either decrease the benefits to the people who get them or when they retire, you increase the contributions to the people who are by the people who are working, or you defer the benefits. Three options. I haven't heard them come up with any, but we are wicked by choosing the one that is more palatable. Because the truth is that if Barbadians are living now well into the 80s and 90s, more of them I should say, it means that your retirement age, if it goes up by 2 or 3 years, is not going to interfere a lot. I know that has made people uneasy because it's a mental adjustment. You have to prepare now to work a little longer. But there is nothing that stops someone from retiring early. It's just that you will not be able to draw the maximum if you do not have the required years in. But the decision was not done out of spite, sir. The government took the decision that we will not reduce the coverage of benefits that Barbadians get from the NS. The government took the decision that we will not increase the contributions of the working people to pay for that adjustment. That is the decision that we made, defer. If they come up with a better option, and they were in all the meetings that we had in this chamber where the experts, the actuaries came and told us what we had to do. Sir, this economic transformation is continuing, is on the way, it's continuing. The recovery, sir, is behind us. It is time to deal with the transformation of the Barbadian economy. We have had, sir, the move from junk to 15 quarters of economic growth. We have seen, sir, the Bridgetown Initiative 3.0 being embraced by countries all over the world. Barbados has become a mighty voice for climate justice. If you go on UN, Google UN climate change, climate resilience, and they have on the front page, Barbados has become a mighty voice for climate justice. We're one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change in the world. This budget deals with climate adaptability and resilience. We face a debt crisis, which makes investing in climate resilience more difficult. And these measures in the budget address these concerns. And just as Sir Louis Tell used to say to us before, if you pave all the roads in the country and they're not leading anywhere, you're just going around in circles. We have to deal with our climate resilience. We have to take it on as our own mission, because we are not going to get any ease from the man with the drill, baby drill philosophy. And the countries in the world that want to empower those who have doubled their wealth since 2020. The Barbados Initiative, the British Initiative 3.0 represents a radical rethinking of the global financial system, speaking to debt relief and new lending and private sector investments. The minister in the Ministry of Finance in the other place, Mr. President, spoke to the Barbados investment plan. And I heard Senator Malilu, and I want to assure him, sir, that the Barbados investment plan, which was published by the government last year, speaks to raising $26 billion to fend off, the Barbados investment plan, sir, speaks to raising about $20 or so billion over the next 10 years to deal with the investment infrastructural needs of the country. Now, let me be very, very clear. The government finances its operation by taxes, revenue, or by investment coming into the country from which you can get downstream revenue, or from borrowing. You don't want more taxes. We have a small population that is working relative to the size of the economy that we have and the social services that we have to provide. So we can't tax it out of Barbadians. But as Oinaka taught us, if a certain percentage of your GDP is not being generated by investment, then there will be a decline in the social services in the country. So our approach has been consistent. Yes, we wanted to see a day when there is no longer a cane blade in Barbados. But, Mr. President, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? The Afromix Bank Trade Center is now popular on the minds that we give away the land. When the Right Excellent Aaron Barrow, Sir Frank Worrell, and others got on to that plane, flew around Barbados, they were looking for land to give to the University of the West Indies as an investment in the people of Barbados. That site was chosen. The university didn't buy it. It was an investment in the people of Barbados. And when Oinaka saw the importance of the university to the Barbadian economy and society, he told them to go down the hill by the Lazaretta and get all that land and build out the campus. And I want to say to Senator Walters, tell the people of St. Michael Northwest that when they look up the hill at the university, right? They vote for you either. Tell the people of St. Michael Northwest how those persons in upstairs and husbands and one state have been able to take those Venezuelan houses and build them into large bungalows out of rental accommodation that they now don't live in, and have been able to invest in their children and their futures through the University of the West Indies and the contribution to the Barbados economy. Tell them that Free Hill and Gainsbury and those areas in Black Rock can also benefit from you. But you know what they did? They tried their best to kill the campus. Killing it. We'll come to that another time. When the government wanted to have a center for Caribbean finance, the Caribbean Development Bank, land. Barbados cannot stand splendidly in isolation. The Africa, I heard the leader of the opposition say in an interview that he never heard about them yet. Like this is some knit and trade, cottage industry that come and hoodwink the government of Barbados. Tell the people the truth. They're building $180 million in facilities. $180 million. They're headquartering the Afromix Bank in Barbados. And we have a headquarters agreement with them. The government is already providing accommodation for them in the agreement. They're the headquarters for a large African bank, and we want to talk about how we are in solidarity with our African brothers, and that is so important, that support the black man and that kind of thing. There's a lot of talk and hot air and fluff. But you are trying to whip up a grievance that somebody coming to take the Barbadian land. Somebody taking it there and we get tricked. Mr. President, let us be real. This bank is currently on the trajectory to move to $2.5 billion in economic trade activity in the region. Barbados is the headquarters for that. This facility, sir, will be a flagship for offices, a technology incubation hub. When you talk about not diversifying the Barbadian economy, you have a multi-billion-dollar financial institution coming to bring a technology incubation hub in Barbados, a trade center. And they're looking at Africa, the Caribbean, and Latin America. In the world in which we now heard the president suspend all U.S. aid to these places. Friends of all, satellites of none. So we are not friends with Africa. We're not friends with Asia. We're not friends with the Arab countries. We're not friends with the countries on the subcontinent. This investment in Barbados is reinventing the infamous mill passage in a way that we have never thought before. The economic relationship between Africa and the Caribbean and the rest of the world. They have spent, Mr. President, or financially to say, a $200 million hospital in Grenada. This is Afromex Bank. $150 million in roads infrastructure in the Bahamas. $1 billion in local content financing, in a local content financing facility for Guyana's oil and their pipelines. This is a relationship of equal partners that are interested in the advancement and the development of Caribbean people. They are partnering, sir, with all of the governors of the central bank right now with a payment system for the Caribbean so that we don't have to be paying one another for goods and services in U.S. currency, in foreign coin, that we can be able to trade with one another without interfering with a balance of payments. They're bringing their technical capacity to facilitate the establishment of a Caribbean Exim Bank because they have done it, and that is what is coming to Barbados. But just, sir, like how they get and frighten Barbados and tell them the cadavers, don't bring the medical school here. You go down to Lansopine in Grenada and see the transformation of the southern coast of Grenada into a university town, which is a large part of the GDP of that country. But we were told in the 1980s that having a medical school in Barbados, the people bringing in cadavers and Dracula, importing Dracula, don't have that here. And that was the grievance politics and get Barbados excited of it because they have not learned, sir, or forgot anything since 1966. Their worldview is that what happened when Barrow was prime minister, we should keep Barbados, and that's why you had to suffer through Stuart. We have the same thing coming again. Anything that changes that trajectory, and you know what that is, sir? That is what Alvin Toffler called future shock. A psychological state where the pace of change is happening so fast that you go into a shell, and we have to keep the country stagnant where it is. That is the decisive difference between the Barbados Labour Party and the DLP, sir. We don't see the future shock. We see the world is what it is. We understand that men and women who are nothing and who allow themselves to be nothing have no place in it. We see Barbados, Mr. President, sir, as a place where we engage in the international environment. We run with the hares and hunt with the hounds. We run as fast as the lion, we run as fast as the gazelle because the circumstances can change. Mr. President, the food, the loan that we got from the Afromix Bank, the Cricket World Cup. Nearly a word was said, sir, by the opposition. The economic impact assessment of Cricket World Cup was $428 million impact on the Barbadian economy. I want to get it clear. This is not saying that we earned $428 million, but the impact, economic impact of the World Cup. And this is not done by the Barbados Labour Party or any government consultant. This is done and published by the International Cricket Council. The ICC, through an expert economic consultancy that measures all global sport tournaments in the world. And sir, I am proud to report to this chamber that economic impact assessment of the ICC Men's T20 World Cup 2024 was published in December. Generated a total economic impact of $428.4 million US dollars for the Barbados economy. The economic forecasting and modeling is set out in the detailed report. They use the economic multiplier, which determines the secondary and incremental spends within the economy, as a key driver of the impact. Sir, I want to say this to you. Barbados was only outpaced by the United States of America. The impact to the American economy was $618.4 million. But you know what? That World Cup in the United States took place in Texas, Florida, and New York. 3 different states. So the economic impact, the total economic impact that Barbados had was a 26% share of the total generated economic revenue. The total share of the total value generated by the World Cup, not the revenue, not the revenue. So when we break down these figures, sir, we see that there were, in Barbados, 41% of the people who came for World Cup were first-time visitors. 29% of the people who came for World Cup came more than 5 times. Hosting the World Cup had a positive impact on the image of Barbados. 90% of the people who came felt that hosting the World Cup had a positive impact on Barbados' image. 86% would recommend coming to friends and family. 83% of the World Cup helped to promote Barbados as a sports destination. 71% of the attendees are likely to return, and 67% of them felt that the atmosphere was better than any other location. And when you go into the details, Mr. President, I know time is winding up. 91% of our visitors for the World Cup stayed overnight, higher than any other destination. Sir, the largest proportion of them stayed for 5 nights or more, higher than any other destination. And the largest were groups of 3, the next largest were groups of 5 people. Sir, there were the attendees at the World Cup. This is the outturn numbers. 14,092 domestic ticket sales, 38,068 international, players and staff, 661, media broadcasting, 834 persons, the VIP sponsors and guests, 7,916, the technical officials and organizing staff, 3,155. Sir, when we rebuilt the modern Kensington Oval, we understood that it would give Barbados the capacity to host an international World Cup in cricket. We did not host 3 finals, we actually hosted 4. Because I count the women's final in 2010 as separate from the men's final in 2010. The Democratic Labour Party, when they were in office, had the opportunity, sir, to host the Women's World Cup, and they said no. No. That they couldn't find the $1 million to secure the bid. We were so broke. that the government cannot find $1 million in a tournament at which the West Indies were defending women's champions with Haley Matthews and DeAndre Dotting, Shakira Selman, Barbadian women from the rural heart of Barbados that could inspire young people to talk about diversifying the economy. The leader of the opposition says, this money he go down to Spartan, he ain't see a new bat or ball. No, that scares me, sir. It scares me that if he felt that we could measure the success of World Cup by going to Spartan, his famous, what he said words, my beloved Spartan, that's what he said. I don't want not the Spartans, but Spartan get demoted. They get demoted, man. And it is not because of anything that is done by anybody. That is competition, and that's unfortunate. But I'll tell you the difference. Empire now in the under-13 competition, unbeaten. They're unbeaten in the under-16. And if you go around Barbados on a weekend, the dystopian outlook of Barbados is not seen. You see parents, grandparents. We went to the finals, and I had to speak at a university guest lecture on Sunday evening. I had to leave and then go there and then come back. Hundreds of people, ball by ball commentary, people living in festive atmosphere, young people in a laudable endeavor, our national pastime, cricket. So when Senator Reid, the Honourable Minister of Miss, speaks about cricket incubation hub, harnessing that Barbadian talent to take us to the next level, to unlock the pathways and potentials for young Haley Matthews and Craig Braffitts to come out of our environment. And I say to the Honourable Leader of the Senate, I went to the St. Michael School. I asked people, who are the greatest Barbadians that ever went to that school? I know Nita Barr is first on the list. But if you tell me a greater Barbadian coming from St. Michael School other than Jason Holder, an accomplished, world-renowned #1 all-rounder who is a millionaire. I hope I'm not embarrassing him, but I'm doing that to praise the exploits of our young men and women in the field of cricket. Cricket is Barbados and Barbados is cricket. And Senator Walters, when we were here approving the loan from the Afromix Bank to take Barbados' facility that has lost its shine because the technological improvements since 2007 have now made the facility almost obsolete. This is the difference. If you want to see more bats and balls in the hands of people, give them a DLP government. Mr. President, if you want to see a cricketing industry, where not Barbadians are not only playing for the West Indies, but as a friend of mine says, if you see England in the ICC Champions Trophy, 3 Bajans on that team. 3. The captain of Canada in the World Cup, Bajan. Captain of the United States of America, Bajans, Foundation School. Huh? One. A pivot man. Right? And sir, I want to say this. That is the decisive difference. Grievance politics, listing all the social and economic ills in the society and keeping it at the hands of the government so you can get in office and do nothing. And then say, well, look, the economic circumstances are difficult, the international circumstances are difficult, we can't do nothing. That's what they did under Sandiford and Stewart. And that's what they're prepared to do again. Sir, I want to say, and I just checking with time, sir.
You have 3 minutes drive.
Sir, I wanted to...
3 minutes away now.
I wanted to go into labor, sir. Sir, in May, the Nichols and Lashley clan will be gathering in Barbados. Already, we have over 75 people coming into the country, confirmed. Some of them who have not been here in over 30 years. Some of them who only come for funerals or the occasional wedding. I happen to know that Senator Moron Knight is part of that plan because in the investigation of how the family spreads, I had to tell her that so-and-so is your father, this is your grandmother, yeah. You family to me. Because of the gathering. We didn't know we were related. Yes, hooray. When the DLP had the Barbados 50th anniversary of independence to celebrate, you know what they did? They did two things. They built a monument in the middle of the garrison at the boy don't get to, and they bring some parachute men from Ghana to land at the garrison at the parade. One land in the Duck Stream Bonnets, one land at Pebbles, and one land in the car park at the hospital. For our 50th anniversary. And 23 men from the Bayland get national awards for helping remove furniture from a burning house. That was how we celebrated our, y'all remember that, the 50th anniversary? That is the decisive difference.
$8 million was paid. Over $8 million.
And nobody goes to that monstrosity in the middle of the hot sun in the garrison. Still there. But it was part of the 10 glorious years. Sir, there is a decisive difference. And as I close, I want to commend to this house that the world is what it is. Men and women who do nothing and who allow themselves to be nothing. Sir, they have no place in it. I'm obliged to you.
Senator Maynard, please.
Thank you.
Senator, Mr. Maynard.
Thank you, Madam. Ma'am, I rise to speak on what will probably be my last contribution for an appropriations bill. If the terms and conditions under which I was appointed follow the path that's written down. Let me first, sir, acknowledge my former colleague in this chamber, Senator Crystal Haynes, who sat on the opposite side of the table, and while we had our differences of opinions, I enjoyed her time in this chamber. I shall miss, apart from missing her contributions, I shall miss her fashion. But I thought, ma'am, that I should say some things and do it for quote from a book written by Sir Frederick Smith called Dreaming a Nation. And with your permission, ma'am, I shall like to read it.
Permission granted. Please copy the particular quotation so that we can have it as a document. Yes.
It's a quotation by Chinua Achebe. It says, there's a great proverb that until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. And that did not come to me until much later. Once I realized that, I had to be a writer. I had to be that historian. It is not one man's job. It is not one person's job, but it is something we have to do so that the history of the hunt will also reflect the agony, the travail, the bravery, even of the lions. I would like to welcome Senator Jonathan Reed, even in his absence, and I hope that his time in this chamber will be productive and shall bring great results. I wish to turn, ma'am, to an area for me that is out of my zone, and it will begin like this. Yesterday, there was reference, probably off when the Senate was closed, to a statement allegedly made by the leader of the opposition in the other place. And I had my own interpretation of that statement. And the statement related to children who failed the common entrance and what it probably said about their past performance. If I take it in its pure sense and interpret it in a positive way, it speaks the truth as to what happens with the common entrance. And it's not an exam that I have ever supported. I have no shame in saying that. What it raises is the question about the adequacy of screening of our children in this country. I will stop here. This point continues on.
Thank you, Deputy President. Please continue, Senator Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sir, there's no question that the results of the common entrance exam are better for private schools than for public schools. And the private schools are more likely to be filled with children from the upper socioeconomic bracket, those who can pay. But sir, what we need in this country is adequate funding. If we are going to have change in education as proposed, we need to have adequate screening of all of our newborns. And while there are some systems already in place, there needs to be universal screening of our school-age children, and it has to be done in a systematic way. We already have in the QEH screening for congenital hearing loss of all newborn children. And even with that screening, sometimes newborn babies fall through the cracks because of equipment failures, staff shortages. So sometimes you have a cohort of children that haven't been screened, and unfortunately, 4 years on, you find a child that has congenital hearing loss and you've missed it. Or a child has had treatment for a life-threatening disorder, and unfortunately, the medical treatment has caused a complication and you've missed it. And that child ends up in school and discovered in school to have a hearing loss, and might end up having large sums of money spent for cochlear implantation. So the ophthalmic screening is thankfully on the way, and the minister, I suppose, will speak to this. But the screening of well children, once upon a time, only the children who had problems in school were referred for ophthalmic screening. But in more recent times, starting last year, the Ministry of Health along with the Ministry of Education, started a program where children aged 3 to 5 were all screened in the 4 polyclinics. And I think that's a wonderful change. But we have to fund it and keep it going. The screening also is supposed to include children entering secondary school. But apart from screening, we have to be in a position to correct the visual deficiencies that occur. Now, from a pediatric point of view, the pediatricians cry out for the resources to screen the children who present or who might have things like attention deficit disorder, dyslexia, and dysgraphia. You don't recognize words. You can't read properly. And that screening is limited and restricted by the number of professionals, mainly psychologists, that we have available. And I would hope that the Ministry of Health and Education together would be looking to expand those areas so that all children who are entering secondary schools would already have been screened at least once. So some of the problems that we grapple with in the later teens would have been identified very early on, and remedial work with these children would have already taken place. It is not enough to depend on the NGOs to do the important screening. We recently had a program initiated by Rotary Barbados, I think it is, and they've done a wonderful job where they have been going to the schools and screening children. But that screening has to become a normal annual activity. Now, the people of this country pay about $75 million annually in the health levy. And that health levy is passed on to the QEH. But the QEH cannot do adequate screening because it lacks the staff. And the problem with the staff recruitment is not a problem for the minister. The posts have been created, but we seem to be unable to attract the people who will do the professional qualification and become, hopefully, those who will be doing the screening. The government has gone as far, I think, as offering national development scholarships in the area, and have had no takers. So maybe the government should pay someone to put on one of the electric buses, wrap it in the ads like other people do, to encourage parents to screen their children, to bring them for screening, sir, and to encourage the young people who want to have jobs to take up the scholarships and do the important work and probably make a very good living. And the fast food outlets, I will not call any names, maybe they can run some of the ads, because almost every Bajan at some point in time eats some fast food, and you can see it on the boxes. I am not, sir, I'm not politically inclined. I will not get involved with such things. Now, I want to say a little bit about tertiary education. Sir, on Saturday, I had the privilege along with my colleague Senator Cummins and Senator Blackman, to attend a function, what should have been the highlight of at the University of West Indies. And it was for the installation of the 7th Chancellor of the University. It was a major event, sir. And it, in some ways, spoke to support some of the views that were echoed in this chamber about education and what it really means. The 7th Chancellor, the Most Honorable Dr. G.D. Miller, did not attend one of the older secondary schools. He attended a school that no longer exists on paper. It was called Industry High. 300 students. But his exposure and his resilience and all the support he had assisted him to become a champion of business. And he's now the Chancellor. And he, sir, is listed among names like Sir George Allen as Chancellor, Princess Alice, Sheila Ramphal, and a few others. The last Chancellor, Robert Bermudez. But the university, as we see it, is not Capefield campus at all. This tertiary educational institution is a massive facility, sir. And I decided to bring with me the installation booklet. And I, with your permission again, want to read a few things about our university, our alma mater. It's been established in the Caribbean for over 75 years. And it has nearly 50,000 students. 50,000 students and 5 campuses. I don't know how many universities have 50,000 students on their roll. It offers over 1,000 certificate, diploma, undergraduate and postgraduate degree options. That's remarkable in this little Caribbean. And it has a network of over 250,000 alumni. And it's had 25 persons rise to be head of states and 3 Nobel laureates. 3 Nobel laureates in our small, relatively small population. That's a serious achievement. It's ranked in the top 5% of universities in the world, or supposedly Little University of West Indies. And certainly, the ceremony culminated with a song. And those of you who are musically inclined will want to hear that the song was sung by Sam Cooke. But on this occasion, it was sung by a teenager. I think her name was Cherise Goddard. And she sang it with enthusiasm and energy. And I felt she sang it with real belief that change is going to come, that our universities, sir, will not stagnate. And she was diminutive, but absolutely powerful and incredible. My jacket was off my skin because all my hair was standing up. She was powerful. And I felt that whoever chose that song for the occasion did the right thing. I shall not forget it. But sir, our university is a global university. It is not a Caribbean university. We who have benefited probably do not give back enough. And that probably includes me. There's some who've never given at all. But we don't give enough. And we need to do like what happens in other places where the alumni really seriously contribute to the university. And we need to educate the young people that the days of having a degree where you feel that you have to do it in one place and all your experience will be in that one place are over. That there's a move to have tertiary education where you can be in several places. You can do one part of your degree, and UW has such connections. One part of your degree can be done in Barbados, the other part can be done in Jamaica, maybe one part in Canada, and you have a joint degree. And it opens one's eyes and experiences. So I believe that with Mr. Miller's experience and the evidence that he's produced of what he's capable of, having built out Sagicor as a global company, change will come. I feel a little bit unfortunate that I'm this age where I couldn't be at university at this time to be part of the new change. But I expect in my latter years to see a lot happen with our university. And I hope that all of us will continue to give. Sir, I want to say a little bit about water. That precious thing in this country and everywhere. Sir, we heard in the budget that the government intends to give, I call it a rebate to people in the north that's connected to the brown water that they're receiving. And I think that, I suppose it will serve its purpose. But more importantly, the government is making a serious effort in the mains replacement program to remove the cause, the immediate cause of the problem, the rusty mains. But what I am hoping, sir, is that the government will also, through the BWA, and I believe that they're doing it, do some thorough analysis of the water and make sure that there is no public health issue associated with the water. I say that because 90% of our mains are still cast iron mains. And I worry that the problem that happened in the north could happen anywhere else in Barbados. And then you have a series of major problems. So whatever we find, if it's something that is correctable and we genuinely find the cause of it, we can deal with it. Now, sir, I am always worried about mains replacement programs and our ability to execute them in a timely fashion. And I hope that the management and the board in the BWA will make sure that what is being done in the north is done in a timely fashion. Because the last thing we want is a long, drawn-out process that is incomplete and the problem still exists. Now, the BWA, I will give you this one in an interesting way. I was driving one night and a truck came up I think I was driving along Applewaite near the junction, and a truck came down, came around the corner, almost broadside, and I had to really pull hard into the left. And I almost went into a hole. And I found out next day when I passed again that it was because the BW had dug holes beside the road and they were connecting shut-off valves. So I, being inquisitive, parked the vehicle, got out and looked to see what they were doing. And to my pleasure, I found out that they were putting in shut-off valves and diverter valves so they could shut off areas where the water could be closed off for a short segment, and other people could continue to have water if there's a burst main. But I also believe that because of how complicated it looked, with sampling valves in it, that they should be able to monitor for leakages. So one day I would like to believe that there'll be a control room somewhere in the BWA, and people will be able to tell when the mains burst in the middle of a cane field crossing the cane field in St. George. I hope, sir, that when we do all of this infrastructure, that we follow through with what we can really do with it, and it is beneficial to all. Government has done the right thing by reducing the subsidy that farmers pay for BWA water. It, in some ways, sir, I will use this term, level the playing field. It means that if your major input into your crops is cut by almost 50%, you really shouldn't complain about the cost of it anymore. So I would like to see that for the consumer of these crops, the price will change. Because the main complaint has been we pay too much for water, and government has seen it fit to lower the cost of water. There are others, Mr. President, who continue to have free water, but that's a different discussion for another time. Sir, what I am concerned about with regard to water relates to new development, new plan development. And Senator Nichols, proudly and correctly so, spoke about the new development that will happen around the QEH, specifically building on Gemmis Lane, the Pierhead project. He didn't speak of the Pierhead project, I don't think, but also the new hotel further down Bay Street. All of these facilities will consume large quantities of water and produce large quantities of sewage. At the end of the day, they will use potable water in their operations. The water has to come from somewhere. The estimate is that we've already reached 100% usage of our groundwater supply, and any further development will have to depend on desalinated water. And sir, what the governments, I say governments on purpose, have not done is done the public education with regard to water usage, both water conservation and, sir, secondary water usage. They have sat quietly and allowed those who will speak ill of secondary water usage to have the front of the platform. And I call upon the government to get up off the chairs and get out there and do the public education. We go to cities that we come back and talk about, and we drink recycled water. Two people just returned from space. Do you think that the BW is sending water to them every day? They just came back after 9 months. What do you think they were drinking? You think that they were selling bottled water to them? The government needs to do the public education. Do not allow those who continue to speak ill about it for understanding to be at the front of the platform. We have to be realistic. Now, the other matter, sir, relates to the cost of water. 75% of the cost of producing potable water is energy. And governments, when they negotiate, we are speaking about a country that is proud of its green energy push. Government, when it negotiates its contracts for desalination, has to put energy at the front, and the cost of green energy has to be in the equation, and it has to be used to determine the cost of the water per cubic meter. It is not enough to just come up with a number out of a hat and we accept it. Because at the end of the day, the consumer has to pay, and no matter how many incentives you give to individuals to have a potable water tank, it still has to be filled with potable water. And you still have to clean it, and you still have to buy a pump, and all the other things. So Senator Malu this morning spoke about the potable water tank, and there are aspects of it that I'm not sure we've got them right, because I happen to have a potable water tank at home. I only have 400 gallons, but I have 2 tanks, because I believe that the water has to circulate, and I do not want a large tank that has stagnant water in it. If any of you has the courage to empty your tank and go into the tank to clean it, you'll be surprised at the amount of sludge you will find. And that sludge is not Jell-O, sir. That sludge is not Jell-O. So there will be costs associated with having tanks. There will be costs of filters that are replaceable. Yes, there will be lots of employment generated if people clean the tanks and look after them. And the tanks only have a limited lifespan, the plastic tanks. So it's one thing giving a concession for a tank now, but 10 years, 12 years down the line, when the tank leaks, and you have to replace it, you have to, and the pump goes, because the pump runs all the time. As long as you have continuous flow, rather than a reserve tank, the pumps will die. So there'll be ongoing costs. There will also be greater demand on the grid, because every time you turn on your tap and your pressurized valve pressure falls, the pump will cut in and it will burn electricity. So while I am told that in the case of a hurricane and there's a problem with energy supply from the grid, you can have potable water in storage with a tap on it that you can turn on. You will still have to depend on the grid in some circumstances for the power. Sir, I implore the government to speak to the public about the use of the cisterns that we are forced to put in under our houses by law in the Town Planning Act. And dengue used to be a disease of the poor people in the country. It is no longer a disease of the poor people in the country. It is distinctly a disease of the middle class. And I speak without proof, but I rather suspect that the mosquitoes which are now present all year round are not flying in from Mars at night, that they're living in the tanks. So we need to educate the public about the use of the tanks, and we need to seriously get on with the business of having green plumbing, where you can flush your toilets and have your washing machine connected to the plumbing in your water storage tank from your roof. And we need, sir, and I'm not one who often calls for restriction, to seriously look at whether we need to ban, as we ban incandescent bulbs, ban high-volume cisterns for toilets. There was a time, sir, when one was able to buy in this country an incandescent bulb. It's now, I think, illegal to sell incandescent bulbs in this country. We should not be installing 5-liter cisterns or 10-liter cisterns in toilets anymore. We should reach the stage where you can have small volume cisterns that use small volumes of water each time you flush them. And we should also have the option of having a small flush and a big flush, because toilets consume large amounts of water. So water conservation, sir, is an important thing that we need to look at. Sir, I was a little bit concerned about the notion about gas storage. There's the requirement that commercial entities, in addition to having generators and portable water storage, have to have storage of gas. I wondered if that meant that your generator had to be a gas generator. It didn't, the announcement did not say that. And I believe it related to fuel. But certainly if one is connected to natural gas supply, why would you need gas storage? So if your generator is a natural gas generator and natural gas is piped to your area and you're connected, you don't need gas storage. Or do you mean gas as American gas? Do you mean gas or gasoline? Do you mean natural gas, LPG, or do you mean gasoline? Which gas do you mean? It didn't say fuel, it said gas. So I see a little bit of clarification of that. And now, sir, finally, I come to healthcare. I do not have a lot to say, because I'm sure my minister will be going to be speaking. But I wish to comment on a bit of a carrot and a stick situation. The government, I wish to congratulate the government, sir. I wish to congratulate the government and the minister on finally, you want to hear again? I wish to congratulate the minister and the government on finally, sir, completing the matter of recapitalization of the QEH. It's been long, long overdue. In the former administration, an attempt was made to do such, and I'm glad to see that 15 years on, it has finally happened. So I congratulate the government. It will certainly help the people of the country. But I wish to comment, sir, on dental care in this country. It is atrocious. I can comfortably tell you that every day in this country, in my department, we admit to the QEH at least one person with a dental abscess. And the health of a nation is related to its teeth. It says that we're in a terrible, unhealthy situation. I have not admitted any of the big earners, and it's usually those who are less affluent. And it is because they have no recourse. There is no public emergency dental service. And the worst part of it is that we are now admitting children with dental abscesses. I am far closer to the end of my career and my specialty than I was at the beginning, after almost 40 years. I have never seen a child admitted with a dental abscess before. And what it says is that people just cannot afford to seek private dental care. And when the child does get a problem, so the preventive care is not in place, rotten teeth, caries, rotten teeth. So then the preventive care is not in place, and when there's a problem, it gets bad enough that the child has to come into hospital. That is, sir, not good. So I urge the government to reactivate its dental program that it had. If you can find dentists who are willing to work in the public sector, I know that has been a problem, and I'm not about to bash the dentists on government's behalf, but I really should. But we need to find persons who will work in the public sector, provide dental care in the public sector, and help those who really need it. If you look at the amount of money that is spent every day in the hospital on treating patients with dental abscesses, if you put some of that money up front, I'm sure you can pay a dentist reasonable rates to provide the care. And it needs to be done. Sir, our hospital continues to be plagued with problems related to flow. It is constipated. And the problems of flow were predictable and made worse by decisions to expand the A&E without fixing the problems of flow. And now, in addition to that, we unfortunately had a mantra that was repeated over and over by the executive: do not come here. And it continues to be said. Sir, you cannot have a tertiary care institution. Anybody should go on a radio and tell persons not to come to the hospital. It is at best idiotic. It is at best idiotic, because no patient in the middle of the night who wakes up with chest pain will be skilled enough to say, this is not a heart attack, if you're in the right age group and have the right predisposition. So to tell people not to come, and you tell them repeatedly, they will not come until they're at death's door. So we have to stop it. So I call upon the minister to immediately advise those in charge to stop doing it. Nowhere in the world will you go anywhere and hear an ad on the radio telling people, don't come to the hospital, unless it's being bombed or something. Nowhere. But we do it in Barbados routinely as part of the course. So I beg, sir, that my minister will advise them to stop it as of today. Now, sir, sadly, the problems of the A&E department are directly related to the volume that it has to deal with and the seemingly inability to get processes completed efficiently. I really don't know what the solutions are. The length of time that it takes to process someone in our A&E is significantly longer than in the private emergency rooms. But the same doctors, my colleagues who work in such places, process them much faster in the private rooms. So I ask, is there glue on the floor in the A&E that people are stuck and they can't move? Why does it take so long? And it doesn't matter if you are a member of staff or anyone else. It's the same story. And we have a situation where some of the critical areas, the senior staff have abdicated responsibility to the juniors. And the leadership is not there. So I'm going to pick one and be unfair about it. I'll pick the Department of Radiology. Radiology. When a junior doctor issues me, a consultant, a report on a CT scan, I put it in the bin. Because if you're a junior doctor and you send me a report, you're in training, and you send me a report and you sign it, for me, it is useless. When I appear in the Supreme Court and the judge asks me, Dr. Myrna, you acted on this report because I'm being sued, but tell me what the qualification of this person who wrote this report. And I have to bite my tongue and pretend I can't hear the judge. There's something fundamentally wrong with the administrative policies that cannot fix the issues of staffing and having senior staff do what they're required to do. So I once again ask my colleague, the minister, to take the necessary action to fix some of these problems. I know he is trying, but he's having a hard time of it. Maybe, sir, he needs some help from another quarter. Sir, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Mr. Millard. Senator Cummins.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I want to take the opportunity to thank all honorable members who have spoken. I want to begin with Senator Walters, who delivered the reply on behalf of the opposition of Barbados. And I want to also express appreciation to the independent members who spoke thereafter and to the members of the government. I want to take the time, Mr. President, in my wrap-up, just to make a document of the House. This is a document of the House, Mr. President, and it really is in response to quite a bit of conversation that has evolved in the public domain, and it was raised yesterday in the contribution from Senator Lindell Nurse. It was raised again by Senator Andrea Worrell this morning. I want to make a document of the House the record of public accounts meetings that have been held in this Parliament between 2018 and now. The issues that were addressed during that period as a consequence, Mr. President, of late reports, either annual reports or special reports of the Auditor General. Between 2018 and 2023, the first session of this Parliament, Mr. President, the first PAC meeting was held on February 1, 2019, second meeting the 9th of September 2019, the next meeting the 23rd of September 2019, Transport Board and the School Meal Center at 6 Roads. Between, Mr. President, November and September of 2020, the special report of the Transport Board was considered by the Public Accounts Committee. Mr. President, in 2018 and 2023, the second session of the PAC, the first 3 meetings up until August 2021 continue to look at the Transport Board report. From August 2021 to November 2021, Mr. President, the election was called in January of 2022. The Public Accounts Committee dealt with the special audits of the Urban Development Commission, which specifically looked at the Special Poverty Eradication Fund and the Barbados Water Authority. The last meeting of the last session before the election of January 2022, which was scheduled for 19th of November 2021, was cancelled. All of those meetings between 2018 and 2021, Mr. President, were chaired by the then, as he was known, Honorable Joseph Adderley in his capacity as leader of the opposition. The members of the committee constituted the existing members of the other place, the existing members on the government side of this place. In 2022, Mr. President, the first session of this government post the election, the first meeting of the PAC was held on June 3rd, 2024. It was an in-camera meeting and it was not broadcast. The second meeting, Mr. President, of the PAC was held on June 24th, 2024. It was an in-camera meeting. It was not publicly broadcast. The third meeting and the final meeting was held on Monday, the 8th of July, 2024. It was an in-camera meeting. It was not broadcast, and all members of the government side were present. On the first meeting that was held on June 3rd, the then member representing the opposition present was the then Senator Tricia Watson. On the second meeting that was there, the current member of the opposition side, Senator Ryan Walters, was present, and the third meeting, Senator Ryan Walters was present. That was the record of the meeting. In that meeting, Mr. President, there was and there is a record held in Hansard. That record, which can be procured from the government, from the Parliament site, from the Parliament of Barbados, will show that the government of Barbados, the government side of the members sitting on the PAC, agreed and felt that the matters which were captured in all of these meetings that I have spoken about ought to be completed, including those for which witnesses had been called, in particular the Transport Board matter and the Barbados Water Authority matter. Those investigations needed to be completed. There was one report that had already been completed, for which the report simply needed to be written up and submitted by the chairman. The chairman, as I've said before, is the leader of the opposition. Mr. President, the members of the government side in those meetings voiced no objection to the inclusion of any reports to be laid in Parliament and to be considered by the PAC. There was no objection. The position of the government then, as it has remained over time, has been we finish what is started. The government is a continuum. There were items on the PAC agenda that we felt needed to be completed, and in fact, the opposition's own member at the time, as she was then Senator Watson, agreed that it was important to finish work that had been started, and she said so in the committee. It is captured in the records of the meeting. The government then went on, Mr. President, to make the point that the matter which has been referred to in the public domain, which is the Hope report, was not then, on the first occasion of our meeting on June 3rd, 2024, as it is not now laid before this Parliament and therefore cannot be considered by the PAC. The government was very clear as well in those meetings that we had no objection once the report was laid that it would be considered by the PAC as a properly laid and presented document of this chamber. It is incorrect. It is misleading and bordering on something perhaps even more problematic to suggest that this government has at any time objected to the functioning of the PAC. In fact, Mr. President, the record will also show that under the previous government, when the leader of the opposition, now the Prime Minister of Barbados, chaired the then PAC, not only between 2015 and 2016 did the former Democratic Labour Party government seek to abolish the PAC, but they would not appear before meetings of the PAC. That is not what has been done by this government. In fact, I can say without question that the Prime Minister has ensured that on every occasion that there is a meeting called by this Parliament on any matter, the government side takes its business seriously and is present at all times. Anyone who is watching this Senate will see, and they call me Principal Cummins for a reason, they will see that when the cameras come on, the government side is in their seats at all times. We have been here in our seats at all times, also for PAC. And I want to correct and lay as a document of this House the sequence of meetings of the PAC, and to make it known that since the 8th of July 2024, no meetings have been called by the PAC, by the chairman of the PAC, and the government of Barbados. This Barbados Labour Party government cannot be accused of frustrating the work of a committee that it does not call meetings for. Cannot be. I wanted to use the time also as I close today's debate on the appropriation bill to speak not specifically about the details of the bill itself, but I want to make a point, Mr. President, coming out of this PAC document that I have just laid. We are clear that not every Barbadian understands the workings of standing orders, and when we stand to suspend standing orders and to refer to the rules of the House and to refer to legislation and the work of the various arms of government, not every Barbadian understands that, and we accept that. But it is not a moment to take advantage of the public of Barbados to engage in scaremongering, fear-mongering, misinformation, lack of information, or twisted information. That is not the Barbados that we want to have any part of. Instead, what we want to be able to do, as a consequence of these estimates of expenditure, the investments in education, are to ensure we build a strong nation. You have heard from Senator Blackman, the new minister with responsibility for education transformation, that there is to be an investment in our people. An investment, Senator Blackman, also needs to be done in civic education for our people as well, so they understand when people are trying to mama-guide them. We heard from our new minister with responsibility for MIST. He has spoken about empowering our youth, getting them into a place where they can lead, and they will lead with integrity, Mr. President. We support that. And Senator Gregory Nichols, my schoolmate and comrade. No, not her comrade, St. Michael's School. I don't know why he keeps forgetting that part. Senator Gregory Nichols, Mr. President, gave a stellar history lesson in here today, Mr. President. He took us through the history of the Barbados Labour Party, the Democratic Labour Party, and he has ended in a way, Mr. President, that was where I started but could not have done in the detail that he has done, Mr. President. And so I want to thank him because he has saved me having to wrap up in the kinds of detail because he has already done it. And so I want to thank him for his contribution. Mr. President, as I close, as I beg to suspend this session in a few moments and to beg that this bill be read a second time in a minute, I want, Mr. President, to also thank the honourable senators who have been here over the course of the last few days, delving into the weeds and the details of the 2025 to 2026 estimates of expenditure, looking back historically at what has been spent by governments, and to be able to share with the people of Barbados the balance between a government rescuing a country in the first instance while simultaneously navigating crises domestically and internationally, and still at the same time making a commitment to people, to communities, to youth, to education, to health, Mr. President. That is who the Barbados Labour Party has been. It is captured in these estimates. It is captured in the budgetary statement that has been delivered by the minister in the Ministry of Finance, and it is captured in the philosophy of this Barbados Labour Party. And with these very few words, Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill is read a second time.
The question is, that this bill be read a second time. Will those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, the bill has been certified a money bill.
Yes, I hereby certify the money bill, and we therefore will not be going into the committee stage. Senator Cummins.
Mr. President, it's been a long morning. I beg to move that we break for lunch and resume at 2:15 p.m. No, 3:15 p.m., I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mr. President. It's been a long day. I beg to move that the bill be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. Will those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Senator Cummins.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Appropriations Act of 2025.
The question is that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Appropriations Act 2025. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited.
Mr. President, I beg to move that we suspend this sitting for lunch until 3:15 p.m.
The question is that this sitting be suspended until 3:15 p.m. today. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This sitting is suspended until 3:15 p.m. today.